since we were young, we've always been told that honesty is the best policy. But honestly, honesty is difficult. Honesty is hard. Choices are hard, ladies and gentlemen. In democracy, these kinds of things don't come easy. But the fact of the matter is, you need to know what people think, and you have to give them that particular space, understanding that these difficult choices and these difficult voices don't always make it through in the real world. Which is why we think we celebrate the internet, which is why we think it is an equally valid tool of democracy. And it's not something that you simply say is half-hearted, period. Because we have to recognize the deficiencies in status quo, and we think this is in fact a real bridge toward these particular issues. I'm going to discuss to you two things. First, I'm going to talk about how it is in fact a tool of engagement across all levels. And secondly, I'm going to talk to you about how it is the forum for the most sensitive issues that sometimes do not see the light of day in society. Before I go on, let me start with a couple of rebuttals. They first talk to us about how strength in action equals, no thanks, validity. That if the action is more difficult, because obviously you cannot mask a rally, or for example, you cannot mask who these individuals are, that's the only time it's really valid. But we think, ladies and gentlemen, even in this, the value of participation can change across levels. Like for example, I can care about the US war, but I might not necessarily want to go to war. For me, my level of support shows the funding. Does that mean that I don't have a say, or that I don't care about the particular issue? Or does it simply mean that I am differently equipped? We don't think it's right for them to judge that. Secondly, when they talk to us about half-hearted individuals, we're going to concede that there is a spectrum of internet usage. Some people like convenience as a favor to friends, but we don't think that that's the only kind of individuals that exist. In fact, what we will argue is that there is a more conscious choice when people choose to like things online. Why? Because online, there is a wider array of choices. There are no barriers to the kinds of information you can access. In fact, you're not choosing based on hours, you're not choosing based on minutes, you're choosing based on seconds. Meaning the types of things that you want to engage to, you make with conscious decisions because it's so easy to leave these particular things. But secondly, we think that it actually allows you to be able to have a say on things that you cannot always be physically present in. Like for example, if I'm American and I do want and I think human rights is important, and I think that if I look at it, Africa, right, is most likely the most visible place where this is difficult. But it's very difficult, for example, for individuals to have to go to a human rights society, donate money there, pledge money there, go to a rally and things like this. We think if these particular kinds of forums, in fact, in the first place, allows you to care about these particular kinds of things. But secondly, we think just like a vote, simply because you make a decision, it's simply a translated vote online. That you are saying it is an important thing, you are saying that it deserves attention, and you are saying that these things must be acted upon. Lastly, they talked about the idea of visibility and relatability. We think, ladies and gentlemen, what's more likely is that there are in fact more groups and more online advocacies than there are real and tangible ones in the real world. That's why if you're talking about having individuals have a say in particular things, it's more open in these kinds of places because it's easier to set up particular types of opinions.
If I give $5, for example, to feed the children, my total democratic participation has already been limited to that $5 because I feel like I've done the world so much good when I've done it. How is that a good thing?
Sir, we never said that it was better. What we're saying is that it's equally valid because we have to recognize in a democracy there are multi-tiered approaches. It doesn't limit it to that. Second, so let me go into my discussion. I'm going to talk to you about how it's a tool of engagement across all levels. We think, and as I said, democracy is not an easy thing. In and of itself, it has walls that makes it difficult for individuals to voice out their opinion. And the state must be able to recognize this if they really want to understand their people. Why? Because not everybody can afford to take time off of work to go lobby in Congress like what RJ wants. Not everybody, for example, is brave enough to go to a rally or on the streets. Does that mean that they do not deserve or that they are not democratic and that their voices should not be heard? We don't think so. We think the capacity to participate varies per individual, and that's what we value in online advocacies. Because firstly, it widens the places where these individuals can participate by lowering that particular threshold. Because in the real world, you either have to be extremely brave or you have to be rich enough to get your opinions to matter to people. You have to be able to buy a space on a publication. But that's not necessary for you if you do that online. In fact, we think it's less discriminatory discriminatory because there is less power asymmetry. Because my click is as valid as your click, and my words are as valid as your words in this place. That's where you get greater engagement, and you don't just limit it to the people who already have a monopoly of power in status quo. No thanks. That's why we think it's more representative, and that's why it is equally democratic. Secondly, I'm going to talk to you about how it's a greater forum for sensitive issues. We think, ladies and gentlemen, there are issues that cannot bear to face the light of day in the real world. People are ashamed, for example, of rape issues. People are afraid to say that they have STDs, or they have HIVs, or that their father raped them when they were young. And we agree, in the real world, you do have support systems for these kinds of people. But are you telling me, ladies and gentlemen, that anonymity is not a value? Because we value it in the sense that if people are afraid, that if people are uncertain, they still have a space of engagement. They can talk to people who face the same kinds of things. They can find people who can direct them towards particular things online. And we think, ladies and gentlemen, otherwise, you scare them away. If the only value or the only threshold, and when you say they are important, is on the real world or on real action, we think that they will not ever be able to come out. Ultimately, we think, ladies and gentlemen, we can even say that they bridge the real world in terms of these sensitive issues. Because before the advent of the online advocacies, did you ever think that we would know that anorexia was such a big issue, or bulimia was such a big issue? No, but it was because of the internet, and you have these particular online advocacies that actually try to bridge these kinds of information. You can look for websites that give you particular types of information that made this kind of thing more real. And people were able to find these kinds of information even if they did not have the courage to come out. Ultimately, we think it actually has a particular value because we think issues vary in terms of sensitivity, but that does not mean that we cannot simply put them and say that they are unimportant. So we think at the end of the day, when you're talking about democracy, it's not easy, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve to be a part of it. We think it's the online power that has actually allowed individuals to bridge this and to be a better part, and to better be part of a democracy. Thanks.